All right. Well, again, good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Knapp, and I am the manager of the Recovered Materials Unit. Also on today, we've got Cassie Rowicki, who manages the Tire Grant, Hannah Tripp, who manages the STAR Grant, and Hannah Baker, who manages the RWD Grant. Lena Champ, excuse me, Lena Sassoni, as many already know, she manages the Recovered Materials and Abatement Program. And the four of us, or five of us, I cannot do math today, make up the Solid Waste Trust Fund Grant Program team. So I'm going to start this off with just a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to be pausing throughout the presentation to answer questions of presented material. We are also going to allow for questions at the end to provide further clarification or address anything not covered. We are using the chat feature for questions, so not Q&A. Please include your name and affiliation along with your questions. Hannah Tripp is going to be monitoring the chat, and we also will have the opportunity to allow those who have called in by phone to ask questions. They will press *9, which will raise their hand, and then we will be able to unmute you. Once I call on you, you may unmute by pressing *6. Please first give your name and affiliation, and then you can ask your question. And Hannah is going to paste those instructions in the chat. You can also find information about the RWD grant materials and Tire grant materials online, and Hannah's going to paste those links in the chat as well. So that everyone has an opportunity to ask questions today, please be as brief and as concise as possible. The grant team and I are always available to schedule follow-up meetings, to discuss your project, go through this presentation, whatever you need, just let us know. If there's any question that you forget that you think about after this presentation, feel free to reach out to us at swtf.grant@dnr.ga.gov. We're also going to be sharing all the questions that are asked, both in the webinar today and submitted through our email online, so that everyone will have access to the same information. So today we are going to be starting off with a bit of a background about the Solid Waste Trust Fund Grant Program, and then we'll get into talking about some project examples. We will discuss eligibility requirements, touch upon funding. We will also go through our timeline, our application process, briefly discuss reporting and invoicing, evaluation and scoring, and then close this session with a question and answer session. So as far as the background, the Solid Waste Trust Fund is funded by the tire management fee through the sale of new tires in the state of Georgia. And in November of 2020, Georgia voters approved a constitutional amendment authorizing the Georgia legislature to dedicate fee revenue directly to the purpose for which the fees were imposed. So some of you, may recall that back in the day, 10, 15 something years ago, we used to have recycling grants. That unfortunately stopped around 2008 in the recession period, because money was taken from the trust fund to go towards other emergency purposes. We have now since, protected the Solid Waste Trust Fund. So that way, then all the fees that are dedicated for that have to be used towards the authorized uses, one of which is a grant program, supporting recycling and waste diversion. So we've had the STAR grant, which is the Scrap Tire Abatement Reimbursement Grant, for many, many years. But through this new increase in funding, we were able to create the Recycling and Waste Diversion Grant and the Tire Products Grant. What's really exciting is that today we are starting the third cycle of the Recycling and Waste Diversion Grant. We've had two very successful first years with this, and we are now starting a third. And we also had a very successful first year of the Tire Products Grant and are now entering the second. So very excited to discuss these grants and projects with you here today. So the three grants that are offered through the Solid Waste Trust Fund Grant Program, so the Recycling Waste Diversion Grant, which overall focuses on, reducing solid waste, recovering valuable materials, supporting manufacturing, and encouraging innovation. The Tire Products Grant supports and incentivizes the use of tire-derived products and supports innovation and market development for scrap tires. And then our third grant, which we will be having a separate webinar for tomorrow, is the Scrap Tire Abatement Reimbursement Grant, which provides funding to local governments to clean up scrap tires through collection or amnesty events, right-of-ways, and local government-led abatement or tire dump projects. As I had just mentioned, we are going to be having another webinar tomorrow that is going to focus on the STAR grant, as well as review the new portal requirements for the STAR grant. If you haven't already signed up for that webinar, you can now by using the link here, which Hannah will also put in the chat. We did last week have a webinar training on the new Solid Waste Trust Fund Grant Program Administration portal, specifically for the RWD and tire grants. If you missed that webinar, we do have the recording online. You can click this link and you can go and review that recording. And now I'm going to pass it over to Cassie Rowicki to go over the details about the Tire Products Grant.
Hello, everyone. All right, so we're going to be discussing the Tire Products Grant, and we'll be talking about the different tracks and some of the different projects. So the first track is the Tire-Derived Products track. This track is for projects that utilize TDP instead of conventional or virgin material. For this track, there is no match required. For the products track, grant funds will only pay for the difference in price for the direct cost of incorporating TDP. For example, if installing regular mulch at a playground is about $1,000 and installing poured-in-place surfacing is $5,000, then the eligible amount would be $4,000. Examples of direct cost include materials cost or specialized services, such as the mixing of TDP. Recent studies have raised concerns with the environmental and public health impacts associated with loose TDP. As a result, EPD will not fund projects utilizing loose tire-derived mulch or tire-derived beads. So some examples of different projects for the products track include roadway paving projects and poured-in-place playgrounds or trails. EPD will maintain a list of helpful industry contacts on the Tire Grant website. So the other track is the Research of New and/or Innovative Uses track. These projects seek to identify innovative uses for TDP. Awarded funds may be used for all costs related to research, such as materials testing. For the research track, there is a 20% match required. So in FY24, there were 11 grants awarded for a total of $1.4 million. And just to highlight a few of those projects, you can see the roadway paving project from Floyd County, the poured-in-place surfacing installed by the city of Cedartown, and the research being done at Georgia Southern University. So some examples of low-scoring projects include projects that do not align closely with the Tire Grant goals of reducing solid waste in Georgia, supporting manufacturing and market development for scrap tires, and encouraging innovation. Projects that use materials that have a low percentage of TDP, and that's specifically for the products track. Projects that do not provide detailed responses to questions asked. Projects that do not provide sufficient support and documentation, and projects that do not demonstrate an impact on recycling and recovered materials for scrap tires, specifically for the research track.
All right, we are at our first pause for questions. So, Hannah Tripp, let me know if there's anything in the chat.
Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat yet.
Okay. Well, if there's none, we'll go ahead and continue. And if there's something that someone thinks up, we can, we're going to be pausing again throughout the presentation and at the end. So don't worry, we will have time to go through all questions. And now I will kick it over to Hannah Baker to review the Recycling and Waste Diversion Grant.
Alrighty, y'all. So the RWD grant allows eligible applicants to develop project proposals that best support their community's needs. Projects must focus on increasing recycling, reducing waste, and or diverting recovered materials from the solid waste stream. So let's go over some RWD project examples. So first off, infrastructure that creates, expands, or improves recycling capacity is one project type. This could be a material recovery facility, transfer station, or convenience center. Successful recycling programs depend on efficient collection and basic processing of materials. This is achieved through the hub and spoke model, which works by creating regional recycling processing centers within larger communities that serves as hubs, quote unquote. And they encourage smaller communities or spokes to deliver their recyclables to these hubs. Recycling hubs will invest in or solicit grants like RWD for capital equipment and infrastructure needed to create and store high-density bales of materials that remanufacturing markets require. Spoke communities will invest in or solicit grants like RWD for recycling collection trailers or containers. These mobile drop-off stations are easily transported to nearby recycling hubs. Next up, hard to recycle material projects focus on hard to recycle or hazardous waste diversion is another example of a fundable RWD project. Recovery of additional materials projects focus on recovery of a new material stream that currently is unavailable to the community. Waste reduction projects may be something new or may be used to extend an existing program at the local level that reduces waste. Innovative projects can be tricky, as the ultimate project goal should be waste reduction or diversion, but finding new and creative ways to achieve that goal and or use of recycled materials which keeps them out of the landfill are also welcome proposal ideas. So 21 grantees were awarded more than $2.7 million in the fiscal year of 2023. On the screen, you can see a list of awardees along with some project example pictures on the right. And this past year, in fiscal year 2024, 8 grantees were awarded for more than $1.9 million. We are very excited to see what new and exciting projects are awarded in the FY25 cycle. So let's talk about some projects that might score low. So projects that do not closely align with RWD grant goals. These can be found and emphasized in our RWD grant guidance found on the Solid Waste Trust Fund website or that Hannah Tripp dropped at the beginning of the presentation. Another example is projects that do not demonstrate cost effectiveness. Be sure to pay close attention to this when filling in your project's budget and narrative to emphasize the need for each grant-funded item. Examples of project which the primary activity and use of grant funds is not directly associated with recycling and diversion. This can be land acquisition, paving, grading, or site preparation. This does not include projects that expand recycling in which land acquisition, paving, grading, or site preparation is only part of the overall project. Lastly, it is very important to be clear on the metrics that are identified in your application. Projects that focus on operational efficiency or improvement rather than recycling and diversion outcomes, and pilot projects without sufficient cost-effective justification and longevity metrics are more likely to be scored lower. So, regarding an ineligible project, education may be a component of an eligible RWD and tire grant project, but it cannot be the primary focus of the project. In addition, projects that seek reimbursement for completed activities prior to the execution of the RWD grant agreement cannot be rewarded. Your project can request funds in advance, but they cannot be dispersed till after grant execution. Projects regarding improvements for landfill capacity and/or any landfill activities that do not include recycling or diversion cannot be funded. And if your project is in violation of the Georgia Comprehensive Solid Waste Management Act and the rules and regulations of the state of Georgia.
All right, we are at our next question session. So I'll go ahead and pause, let people type some stuff in, and Hannah Tripp, just let me know if anything pops up.
Okay, we have a couple things in the chat. There's Nancy Smallwood from Forsyth County. I guess doesn't have like a question in the chat.
Let me unmute you, Nancy. Let me find you in the attendees list. Which I don't see. I guess Nancy Smallwood, are you under Chelsea Clark?
Yes.
Okay. Oops, where did that go? Okay, I have unmuted you, Chelsea, if you'd like to ask your question.
Yeah, it's Nancy. I got on here underneath Chelsea's invitation. I was just curious, can you get a grant when have another one that's open from y'all, or do you have to close the other one?
You do have to close out your other grant, and we're actually going to be going over that information in the next few slides.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm jumped ahead.
You're good. It's a good question.
Okay, and we also have Mo from Alex Polymer, who asks, do you facilitate matchmaking between interested parties?
Hey, Mo. No, that is not something that we typically have done before. I would be interested to know, if you would like to reach out to the Solid Waste Trust Fund grant email, let me know what you're thinking and maybe we can start a discussion.
Okay. I'm not seeing anything else on the chat.
Okay. All right. Well, we will proceed to the next section.
We're going to cover eligibility, funding, and timelines. Hopefully, Nancy, we answer your question in this one. So, who is eligible to apply? This is going to be county, municipalities, or any other combination of the same, which we refer to as local governments, are eligible, as well as public authorities, agencies, commissions, or other institutions. Examples include public colleges and universities in Georgia, city, county, state managed airports, and other state agencies and solid waste authorities. This goes without saying, but applicants must be located in Georgia. Local government applicants must have a qualified local government status at the date of their application. This is determined by the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. The Georgia Department of Community Affairs maintains an active listing of local governments who are ineligible to receive state funding, including grants. We can share that link in the chat. So nonprofits and private organizations are not eligible for funding. One example is Keep Georgia Beautiful Foundation. KGB alone is not an eligible applicant because they are a nonprofit. However, you may partner with an eligible applicant, like a local government, and have the eligible applicant submit the grant application on behalf of the partnership. Applicants who are subject to an open EPD consent order or other EPD enforcement action are not eligible to receive grants. And applicants who have received grant funds in past years but have not demonstrated successful administration of those grants may be deemed ineligible by EPD. Successful administration includes, but is not limited to, demonstrating completing all project activities during the contract period, meeting all required deadlines, completing the project on time and on budget, expending all grant funds requested on project activities, and providing adequate documentation as requested by EPD. Projects selected in one grant cycle may be resubmitted in future grant cycles. Previous RWD entire grant awardees are eligible to apply in a new grant cycle as long as they have completed all the terms of their agreement and successfully administered the grant funds. Previous RWD grantee awardees may not submit the same project that they were previously awarded for. They may also not seek to extend or modify their current agreement. Grants will be awarded each state fiscal year, which runs between July 1st through June 30th. Funding may vary from year to year, and there may be multiple rounds of funding each year. Eligible applicants may apply for any amount up to the maximum available per cycle, subject to the allowable cap. However, EPD reserves the right to award partial funding for projects depending on the availability of funds and the applicant pool, which varies from year to year. It is important to note that grant funds are paid out on a reimbursement basis. Funds in advance will be considered on a case-by-case basis. If you feel that your project requires funds in advance to achieve your project's objectives, please identify that need in your project's application. You will need to provide an explanation on why you can't follow the current reimbursement model and why you need the funds in advance. Reimbursements in the contract will be a little bit different. Alrighty, so now we're going to review the timeline. So the application period so the portal will open on August 15th, 2024. Applications will be due on September 30th, and then the review process will be between October and November. We are projecting to send out grant awards around December to January of 2025.
Thank you, Hannah B. We are at another pause point for questions.
Nancy Smallwood asked, like, can you show the previous slide one more time?
Absolutely. This slide, Nancy? And this information as far as the application opening period and when applications are due is also on EPD's website. You're welcome. Okay. Well, barring any other questions, we'll keep this rolling. Cassie, your turn.
All right, so let's get into the fun part, which is the application. So firstly, applicants must submit a completed application to be considered for award. Applicants may also only submit one project per grant cycle. So as mentioned, starting this year, applicants will be submitting their application through the Solid Waste Trust Fund Grant Administration portal. Applications submitted through email or other means will not be accepted. As Sarah mentioned, we hosted a webinar last week to review the new grant portal, how to create your account, and how to complete the application. If you missed the webinar, you can view the recording online as well as other guidance materials. We understand that this is a new process, and if you need any assistance, please reach out. So now onto some considerations before applying. First, does your project and organization meet the eligibility criteria? Does your project and organization have the support of an authorized official who will need to sign off on each step? Who in your organization is going to administer the project? Does your organization understand the amount of work it will take to complete the project before beginning? Is your organization able to see the project through to successful and timely completion? Does your organization understand all expectations, such as reporting, that receiving a grant entails? And have you considered all costs, such as shipping and freight or installation services in your budget? Another consideration to make is which vendors is your organization eligible to work with? Your organization will most likely have protocol for procurement. For example, services over a certain dollar amount may require bids. There may be some services that your organization already has a pool of qualified vendors for that you must use. The Solid Waste Trust Fund Grant Program does not specify procurement protocol. Rather, it is left to each applicant to follow their organization's established procurement methods. So for example, your organization has contacted a company to supply a quote for tire-derived rubberized asphalt to submit as supporting materials for the tire grant application. Your project is then awarded. You must then follow your organization's procurement policies to hire a vendor to perform the service. If there is a vendor you would like to use, it is your responsibility to ensure that that vendor is eligible to do business with your organization. So the application consists of the following sections for both tire and RWD: project information, project narrative, project timeline, project budget, supporting materials, and signature. Here is an overview of what those sections will look like in the grant portal. So in the project narrative, applicants will be asked a series of questions. For the RWD grant, these will relate to the description, objectives, metrics and evaluation, budget, and cost effectiveness. For the tire products tract, they will relate to the description, need and purpose, community served, utilization and metrics, and marketing and education. For the research track, they will relate to the description, methodology, evaluation, marketing and publicity, scaling potential, and innovation. For more detailed information and tips, please review the guidance documents for each grant, which are available on EPD's website. For the project timeline, applicants will include a project start and project completion date, as well as key project activities. Please keep in mind that there is no time limit for the overall project. However, grant funds must be expended within 24 months of the award. For the project budget, each grant is slightly different. For RWD, there is no project cap and no match required. For the tire products tract, there is a $250,000 maximum grant award cap and no matches required. For the tire research tract, there is a $250,000 maximum grant award cap and a 20% match is required. For all applications, applicants must describe each line item that grant funds are requested for, and documentation for each line item must be provided. Applicants will also indicate if funds are attributable to a Georgia-based business. So as stated in the previous slide, a 20% match is required for the research track of the tire grant. For the RWD and products track, a match is not required, but applicants may include a match to supplement project cost. A match is a cash or in-kind resource commitment beyond the grant dollar amount requested. Match items should be documented through letters of commitment, copies of checks, payroll records, or etc. So some examples of cash matches include engineering, construction materials, and equipment rentals. Some examples of in-kind matches include donations, volunteers, staff time, materials, and land. In the supporting materials section, applicants will include quotes and cost estimates, as well as documentation for Georgia-based vendors, contractor affidavit, and W-9 form. The contractor affidavit and W-9 forms can be downloaded off of EPD's website. So here's an example of what the contractor affidavit will look like. The contractor affidavit is required for any organization receiving grant funds from EPD. The form is for the applicant to complete, as your organization would be seen as a contractor. You will not need to submit this form to any vendors. So on the Federal Work Authorization User Identification Number line, you will put your entity's E-Verify number. This is not the same as your federal tax identification number. On the name of public employer line, you will see that the Georgia Department of Natural Resources has already been listed. On the name of contractor line, you will put your entity's name. And on the date of authorization line, you will put your entity's registration date with E-Verify. And now here is an example of what the W-9 form will look like. So once applicants have completed all sections of the application in the grant portal, by hitting the Mark Complete button in each section, the Submit Application button will turn green. Applicants will still be able to edit their application until the Submit Application button is hit. Please note that the application is not fully submitted until you have hit the Submit Application button. All right, and after hitting the Submit Application button, applicants will have successfully submitted their application. Please be mindful that you will not be able to edit the application after submitting the Submit Application button unless it is unlocked by grant staff. You will also receive an email once your application has been submitted.
Some reporting and invoicing expectations for your project. So all of grant recipients are required to submit quarterly reports to EPD throughout project duration, as well as a reimbursement request, including invoices and proof of payment for grant spending. Following the grant project selection process, EPD will provide cohesive training on reporting and invoicing to all awardees. So now let's discuss evaluation and scoring. So once your application is submitted, applications will be reviewed by EPD to determine if the applicant and proposed projects are eligible and will be scored according to evaluation criteria. EPD will fund projects starting with the highest scoring first and then award all other projects until funds have been exhausted. If the grant application is approved for award, you will receive an email notification from the grant team to view your portal and sign your agreement. All project types have the same total number of points, a 75 base with 10 bonus points for a total of 85 points maximum. Criteria and scoring rubrics can be found within the tire and RWD grant guidances. Give you all a moment to view the RWD criteria. And the tire-derived products criteria. and the research and innovation criteria. And lastly, bonus points.
All right, so I believe we are just about done with everything that we've presented today. So we're going to allow for more questions. And don't be shy. We set aside, I think, 2 hours. So it looks like, oh, go ahead, Hannah. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say we had a question from Nancy. Are there any bonus points for a match when a match is not required?
Thanks for asking that, Nancy. And no, we had allowed that in previous iterations of the RWD grant, but that is now no longer an option. Bonus points are for projects that involve more than one entity and for using Georgia-based vendors.
Okay, we have another question from Hannah Jenkins of World Reuse. Are there any reuse related projects eligible? We'd love to partner with a local government to implement reuse systems.
Yeah, that sounds like that could be an eligible project. RWD certainly is a little bit more open-ended as opposed to the tire grant, and that we really are allowing communities to tell us, what do they need, as long as it is supporting waste diversion, recycling, and material recovery, those are eligible projects. And for anybody that has, a project idea and they want to discuss, with the grant team, please reach out to us and we would love to set a time to go through some ideas with you. And I guess just to kind of like tag on that, Hannah Jenkins, I'm going to unmute you to see if I can get a little bit more information about what you mean as far as reuse. Let me find you. All right.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic. Hi. Well, yes, I'm on the grants and partnerships team at our World Reuse. We're a leading national reuse service provider, meaning that we provide full service reusable foodware, logistics and washing services. For the most part, we do this in partnership with large venues, arenas, stadiums, events, but we're also very interested in partnering with cities and counties to implement reusables at city facilities or city events. That's a fantastic opportunity for cities and local governments to meet their waste reduction goals as well. So that's a little bit more about us.
Thank you for providing that. Let's see, what other questions do we have? Judy Peterson, I see your hand is raised, so let me unmute you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about those that have received the grant in the past. is it possible we could reach out to a particular contact person who may offer us some assistance in preparing our grant? An example would be Gwinnett County Board of Commissioners. I just wondered if there's a particular contact person that you could share with us, with me.
You can certainly reach out to the grant team at swtf.grant@dnr.ga.gov, and we can help you go through your application.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that, we can do with this time, if there are others on the call that have some project ideas that they're thinking about and want to share what they're proposing, we can use this time to facilitate that conversation as well. Okay. All right, well, we're not getting anything else, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this presentation. So I do want to thank everybody that participated in this webinar today. We are going to be posting this recording online, so you can go back and rewatch it, or you can share it with any others who would be interested in this information. We are also going to be facilitating a webinar tomorrow that's going to go into details about the tire grant and the STAR grant. I always get those two mixed up. The STAR grant and then the new portal for the STAR grant. And feel free to reach out to any of us here on the Solid Waste Trust Fund grant team at any time. We'd love to know more about some project ideas and let us know how we can help you come up with a successful and fundable project. So we're excited to see what fiscal year 25 has in store. Thank you.